So the way that I got my start in the video game industry is actually making modifications for Doom 1 way back in 1993. And it's really significant because that has been the path for many, many game developers, really since the early 90s, finding the games that they like to play, making a modification for them, impressing the guys that made the game, and then landing the job. It's still the best way to get your feet in the industry. One of the most significant things that have helped create the gaming industry that we have today is the use of mods in games. Way back in 1993, when John Carmack released Doom 1, it was the first game that allowed people to make their own levels, to make their own characters, sounds. And that started an entire industry of people building mods, using them as resumes, and then eventually getting hired into the industry. It's how I got my start. It's how many people at id Software got their start, and it really was very significant in the history of video games. So my first real significant contribution to the gaming industry was the creation of the shareware episode of Quake 1. And many people believe Doom was the most influential game of our industry, but I actually think Quake 1 was more influential to what gamers are playing today than actually Doom was. So we've seen through the last 20 or so years the size of the teams that make these games. When we originally made like Quake 1 and Quake 2, we were below 20 guys. Now Rage took over 110 people to finish. So the big AAA titles are taking more and more people. But you also see that in the mobile space, people are able to make games with far fewer folks. But as the mobile devices and the handheld devices become more powerful, you will actually see team size start to grow again. And you will have ballooning team sizes until there's a new paradigm shift or new hardware that appears on the horizon. So this is kind of like the mobile space is very similar to what the video game space was in the early 90s. And you'll see that it will cycle maybe every 20 years or so. So in my opinion, the biggest difference between what people call classic or retro games compared to modern sophisticated games is the amount of stuff you can do. Back in the early 90s, when we were making games like Quake 1 and Quake 2, they were all about just the experience. It was the shock and awe of just running through a 3D world. That was impressive. But gamers have become used to that, and they expect more and more, and they become more sophisticated. So as we develop games now and into the future, the bar for what we need to put into these games just increases and increases. So you will see games becoming much more sophisticated. They'll look better. They'll run faster. You'll have more interconnectivity. So expect the feature curve to continue to move up well into the future. So the first video game that I ever played was actually Space Invaders, the classic arcade Space Invaders. Cost me a quarter, and it was really amazing. And I think my imagination must have been very, very vivid back then because I really pictured, crazy aliens, and I was defending the Earth. And now when I look at the old Space Invaders game, it's just little dots and lines. But back then, I thought that it was truly amazing. So for me, I think the future really is in the social aspect of gaming. The social networks now, they're huge. Millions of people are connected. And we see a lot of games breaking out from the single player to the multiplayer, but eventually you will play most of your games, even if it's a single player game, you will be playing that experience with your friends, with your buddies, with strangers across the ocean. It's the social aspect and the always connected aspect of gaming that you will see really the breakout successes in the near future. So as we look to the future, One of my biggest hopes is that we will have a more unified system for which to create games. We have the mobile spaces, we have the different consoles, we have the PC. There are lots of choices for developers, and it's always difficult for us to pick exactly which platform that we want to develop games on. I do hope that eventually we can come to a more unified standard. Again, I don't know what it will be or what it will look like, but hopefully we can make one great game that runs just on everything. You know, my fear is, of course, the divergent paths of technology, of platforms, of large companies putting up walls and only supporting their own tech, their own systems. And then you have a situation where developers are forced to decide which platforms they support and which platforms to unfortunately leave behind. So QuakeCon is a true grassroots organization. It started without any help from id Software. It was just a group of guys that found friendship online through playing Quake, and they wanted to get together and to meet. And every year it has grown and grown, and it's a volunteer event. We have thousands of people that show up in Dallas in August, which is the hottest month of the year, to game. And it's just amazing that QuakeCon has taken on a life of its own, and the people that come here prove that gaming is social, that there's a community, that you can belong while you play these games together. It's a great movement, and QuakeCon and the idea of coming together in gaming will exist well past the life of even id Software. So there's a big difference between storytelling in video games and storytelling in, for instance, movies or comic books. Or novels, because in video games you are not locked to a camera position. You are not just fed the story. It's the choices that you make dictate the story for you, and how you play the game also changes the story for you. Movies are great. You know, there's lots of emotion that can be told through a movie, but movies will never really get you into the action. And I think that's why first-person shooters are so popular, because first-person shooters get you into the story better than really any other genre. So that's why it's very difficult for video game designers to create these emotional pulls that movies have, because the player is you yourself. You are the character in the game. It's like putting yourself into your favorite movie. It would really change the way the movie is played out. So that is really the challenge. And as you see into the future, as we look to the future, game designers will come up with very clever ways to help tell a better story, at the same time giving you, the player, a chance to interact with that world. I believe gaming is more important than just the raw entertainment that it delivers. Gaming has taken the world and it has really shrunk it. And gamers now are growing up solving problems and engaging other players all over the world. We have people playing people in China, the Middle East, and Russia, and in Europe. And people are discovering that people all over the world, we're all exactly the same. And I really believe, and I know this is kind of lofty, but I really believe that when the gamers of today become the leaders of the world tomorrow, it's just going to be a better place, because we've grown up with the whole world. It's so small, and the people right across the ocean are literally a click away. And when you grow up in that type of atmosphere, you just learn to accept and you learn to solve problems with people from other cultures. And so I really feel the future is bright because of video games. So I get asked all the time, you know, why do you make video games? And I say because I love it. I love being able to create a world and to create an experience that other people enjoy. So throughout the years of my career, I've been very lucky to travel around the world and to meet people that have been directly affected by the games that I've made. I've met people that said that they met their wife while playing Quake. And I've met people that have come to QuakeCon and have met new friends that are now lifetime friends. And the fact that these games really are making a difference in other people's lives. And I was a part of that. is truly amazing.